So what about that new ownership and direction of the paper that we mentioned at the top of the show? We've heard about the concerns about having political operatives in ownership roles, but what exactly is the plan for the Sun, and how is the paper going to approach covering Espanola and the surrounding communities? Correspondent Gwyneth Dolan sat down with new editor and publisher Rich Connor to find out.
Thank you so much for being with us today. I want to ask you first, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get involved with taking over as publisher of The Sun?
Well, I did major in journalism in college. I was an English major, wanted to write, got a job at a newspaper, and in a relatively short time understood what a good newspaper can do in a community. And that would be 55 years ago. And it's all I've ever done. Never intended to do it. I was a photographer, a reporter, an editor, then became the publisher for a large media company out of New York. And my last job with them was as president and publisher of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Fort Worth, Texas, big paper. I left there and started my own company. And so for the past really 25 years or so, I've owned my own newspapers, bought and sold them, and I've done consulting. And this opportunity came along to help some investors who have never been in the business learn the business and spend some time at a famous weekly newspaper, hoping that I can continue the aggressive reporting traditions of that paper.
Well, you brought up the role that a paper can play in a community. What does that look like in its ideal form? What are you trying to continue or even improve on in terms of the Sun's role?
I've been lucky that I've been with a couple of newspapers that were literally startups. So when you do that, you say, particularly in a weekly newspaper, what is it people need to know about their community? They need to know, quite frankly, who died. They need to know what's going on with the city police, county sheriff, state police, fire, education. So you start with those basics that say, let's forget about the feature story on somebody that is doing something phenomenal and unique out there. Let's figure out how we're going to cover the basics of community life. And that's pretty well covered in Espanola. We'll take a new look at how we think we ought to do that. And then beyond that, what I add to it, my own personal belief is that people live in a community because they like it. Now, some may have no choice, but most people today were very mobile. If they don't like where they live, they could move. So they live in a community that they like, in fact, love. And I think that while you're reporting on the things that maybe people don't love, crime, corruption, you ought to also shine a light on those things that make people proud to live there. That will be something that probably we will add more of at the Rio Grande Sun.
Had you heard of the Sun before this opportunity came past you?
I had not. There's a newspaper brokerage company in Santa Fe called Dirks, Van Essen, and April, sell probably more newspapers than any company in the country. And I've done a lot of business with them. Owen Van Essen called me and said, have you ever heard of this newspaper? They may need someone to help them learn the business. And he said, you better watch this documentary. So I immediately did learn a lot about Espanola and the Rio Grande Sun, but not before then.
So what are your goals for the paper now that you know what it's about and you're in Espanola? What are your goals moving forward?
Well, I've been there a month, and so I think it would really be somewhat preposterous for me to say that I fully understand. I don't really understand the community at this point. I'm older than when I used to do this. I had jobs like this when I was in my 20s, and I would be more bull in the china closet. Now I want to wait. I want to meet people. I want to make an assessment, and I want to be respectful of the great business and the community service that the Trapp family performed in Espanola over the last few years. We are not going to lose that zeal for aggressive First Amendment, open meetings kind of reporting, what the public needs to know. And so we're going to stay loyal to that. And then we're just going to take our time trying to figure out if there is a new and expanded role for us.
One of the things that's kind of marked the Sun, it has been really old school about its print edition and pretty reluctant to spend too much time and effort on digital. Do you intend to keep that, or is it your philosophy that this paper should move more into the digital realm?
We will definitely move more into the digital realm. We are not going to abandon print. I am a firm believer that the same people that will read you online will read you in print. We have, as you probably know, 6,000 to 8,000 people on any given Wednesday. There's several mail copies in there, home subscriptions. But these people drive up to a street vendor or walk into a store and buy the paper. That commitment and loyalty is not going to go away just because we have a more enhanced online digital presence, but we'll spend a lot of time on that. For instance, just today, we are updating the wildfires online regularly. That would not have been part of the tradition of the newspaper before. We will be very aggressive in that area.
You talked about the ownership change here. You've no doubt heard concerns about the new owners of the paper, which includes 2 former state Republican Party chairs. What is your response to the concerns that this will make the paper obviously partisan?
No, it won't. I have made it clear there are 9 investors that if they wanted me, which they did, to come help them learn the business and run the newspaper for them, that I would be running it. That's my whole career. It was when I worked for a publicly held company. People in New York were not telling me what to print and what not to print. It's just part of my nature, and it's part of what's essential in this business. I would say that I think the concern that's been raised to me is a concern I would have about journalism. You have 2 former Republican chairman of the New Mexican Republican Party, said Republican a lot there. There are 9 investors. 2? What party affiliation do the other 7 have? Guess what? I don't know. Am I registered in a party? Who knows? So I think to, and I'm not being critical of the question, I'm really glad you asked it. I think the center on that, as well as the managing partner of El Rito, has been in the oil and gas business. For someone to look at 9 investors, and we named all of them. Every one of them has been named. I've been in newspaper purchases where the investors did not want to be named. Named all of them. 2 of them are from Espanola. One's running for office right now, trying to reclaim his state rep seat. But we named all of them. 2 of them jump out because they're prominent Republicans in the state. I get that. That's good reporting. One's particularly been in the oil and gas business, and his family has. So for a reporter to take those 2 pieces and write a story that says top Republicans, big oil, own the Rio Grande Sun. That's an assumption that a reporter shouldn't make. If a columnist wants to say, hey, but in a news story, I think it is one of the things that I personally don't like in day-to-day journalism, and I hope we're not going to do those things at our little, although biggest, paid weekly newspaper in New Mexico.
We just have 1 minute left. This is a tough time for newspapers and news organizations in general. What are your top ideas for keeping the paper solvent and maybe making more money?
I learned this a long time ago. Try to bring in more than you spend. But it's not that simple today. We will add online revenue. That will be an area that we think we can grow. And I think there are some other areas where we can, I think there's more print revenue for us. I may be wrong about that, but I just have a sense there is. I've felt for a long time that after about 10 years, the leadership of a business can easily get stale. It just, you've come up with new ideas, and maybe you've changed the culture and you've made things better or maybe worse. It's just my own personal feeling. The Rio Grande Sun's been owned by the same family for 66 years, and they have done a spectacular job of keeping it going when other papers failed. So now we have to carry on from there. But I think this is an opportunity for new ideas, hopefully new leadership. I have literally run newspapers from Maine now to New Mexico. I owned over 90 newspapers at one time, most of them tiny weeklies. And I think I've picked up some experience and some ideas along the way that I can impart here. We'll have to see. But this group bought the Rio Grande Sun because they wanted to continue in Espanola and Rio Arriba County and maybe expand beyond that. And I'm confident that they are committed and can ride through the ups and downs while we have new ownership and new leadership.
Well, thank you for coming in and talking to us about it. We'll check back in with you as you make some progress.
Perfect. Thank you.